Welcome to the Upshot, multi-world disc golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm Charlie Eisenhood, the editor. Joining me, Josh Mansfield. And look, people aren't going to be happy about it, but I'm going to talk about the 49ers right now. Okay?
Good for you.
NFC Championship game coming up against the Eagles. Brock Purdy, last pick in the draft, can't be stopped. Cowboys go down. As a 49ers fan, watching them beat the Cowboys is incredibly satisfying. But Josh, I got to be honest, it's so stressful to watch these playoff games when your team is involved. Oh. And I know that you don't really know what that's like, but it's tough.
Hey, hang on. I'm pretty sure Denver has a Super Bowl like way more recently than the Niners do.
I don't know. I'm just hating right now. I don't even remember the last time the Broncos made the playoffs. It probably hasn't been that long. It
was when they won the Super Bowl in 2015.
2015.
Yeah, so it's been a while, but you know what? We've got a ring, so I'm holding on to that.
You enjoy these games these last couple of weeks?
Oh, yeah. Oh, so good. So good. Giants and Vikings neither deserve to be in these playoffs. That was made apparent.
Everyone knew the Vikings were fraudulent, and they were fraudulent.
They were fraudulent. And the problem was they got beat by a team who nobody expected to make the playoffs either. And so it was like the Cinderella story and the frauds. And it was like, oh, yeah, either one is just going to get mowed down by the Eagles.
Okay, Eagles, 49ers, who you taking?
So first thing I want to say, I think this is one of like the most even playoffs in the division for the conference championships that I've ever seen. All four teams are really, really good. Right
now, Vegas has all four teams at a over 20% chance to win the Super Bowl, which is crazy.
So good. I really have no idea who's going to win the games and everything, but I will say I am rooting for the 49ers because what a story if Brock Purdy could win the Super Bowl. I love that.
I'm trying to think of a disc golf comp, like it's like a rookie player on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. I mean, like winning a major?
Is it Gannon Buhr?
Is it winning a major?
Is it Gannon Buhr?
I guess, but he wasn't really a rookie, right? I mean, like,
no,
he's too good, right? Like he's a consensus 5-star first round draft pick, number 1 overall.
Right.
That's different than Brock Purdy. It
is.
It's like
I don't.
And I mean, you can see the limitations for Brock. He's like physically too small to like be a truly elite quarterback, I think. But he's not scared. It's amazing to watch him play because he hasn't been afraid of the moment. This Eagles game's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. Their pass rush is really good. Be tough. They have big receivers. They have a mobile quarterback. Like these are all weaknesses for the 49ers. So, but on the other hand, we can run the ball. And their run defense isn't very good. So should be fun.
Terrible.
Should be fun.
Yeah. I mean, look, Kyle Shanahan is just one of the best coaches. He's so good and just is able to build such an amazing roster. I know he's not going to get coach of the year, but I think he probably should deserve it given everything the Niners went through. There's a lot of good coach of the year candidates though.
Well, here's the thing. I got $50 on the 49ers 16-1 preseason. And so I'm like really rooting for them.
Wow.
I took a small hedge on the Eagles future a couple weeks ago. Okay. So, but I'm like, everything is aligned from my rooting for the 49ers right now. So anyway, let's talk disc golf. We are going to continue our 2023 prep conversations. We're going to be looking at some players to watch today. In various categories. And we're also going to pick our Player of the Year podiums. Who's going to finish top 3 in the Player of the Year race for 2023? We're going to do some prognostication. Before that, though, we're going to talk about some news coming out of the Disc Golf Pro Tour. They are going to be streaming 7 Euro Tour events on DGN this year as a part of a new partnership, not only with the Euro Tour, but with a media company over in Europe, Pulsea. And they are also going to be awarding silver points to the Disc Golf Pro Tour at these events. So the logic here seems pretty obvious, Josh. They want a bigger presence in Europe. this is kind of like a springboard opportunity for European players to earn DGPT points and maybe think about, hey, I should go over to the States and play some events. So you imagine, if you play all these events and you play the PCS, which is an elite, and you play European Open, which is a major, you could collect yourself quite a nice number of points and possibly even just straight up qualify for a tour card. Because remember, if you win a silver, you get a tour card starting in 2023. So pretty interesting, all that. And so also some controversy. Players talking a little bit about the fact that Paul Macbeth announced a big European touring schedule, including a number of these events. And then the Pro Tour comes out with this announcement. People are questioning the timing of that, Josh. We will have a chance to discuss that and more about this whole entire thing after our interview with Jeff Spring, CEO of the Disc Golf Pro Tour. That's coming up next. Don't go anywhere. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. The new smaller pound bag, the Rufus, is out now. Round 2 production is underway. You can go over to pounddiscgolf.com and check out some brand new colorways and many options available for your Rufus look and feel. Custom Rufus packs coming soon. Go to pounddiscgolf.com and get yourself a Rufus today. Joining us now is the CEO of the Disc Golf Pro Tour, Jeff Spring. Jeff, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me as always, Charlie.
Always great to have you here. Exciting announcement yesterday from the Disc Golf Pro Tour, an expansion of your European efforts, both in terms of a new set of tournaments getting streamed on the Disc Golf Network, as well as offering silver points at those events. I guess my first question is, how did this come together, and what is the motivation behind wanting to have this kind of pretty significant expansion into European coverage?
Yeah, our European ambition, obviously, we've spoke about this when we announced the PCS Open last year and the European Open coverage, but started right away in 2019 when we took over and founded the Disc Golf Network. I think the European Open and a visit to Europe was top of the list when Todd and I talked priorities. And we were delayed. In 2020, we actively worked to try to put that on the content slate for live, and it didn't work out right away because of the pandemic. And during that time, we were also talking to the PDGA Euro Tour. And the plan, kind of talking in 2020 was to come and do a little bit of coverage in 2021 for PCS and maybe some other Euro Tour events. And we were talking about the European Open, but that all got canceled because the Euro Tour actually didn't run even in 2021. And we decided that, for our first foray into Europe, we wanted to keep it, within our boundaries of, what could go right and wrong. And it was definitely a challenge last year. But we forged some good relationships and have some good connections. And we're able to, start working on the broader plan, which is to put some more Euro Tour events. So this is basically, just adding 7 events. We had PCS and we elevated that. And, we've been working behind the scenes on this particular announcement since last summer. And, obviously a lot of parts and pieces, budgets, travel, contractors, vendors, but it all came together. And, we decided to make sure all our T's were crossed and I's were dotted before putting out the announcement. But we're really excited about it. And it's really stemming from success that we saw at the European Open and PCS Sula last year. Those were 2 very exciting broadcasts. And we put the European Open broadcast with over 20,000 live viewers just behind the Disc Golf Network subscription, that not including YouTube on that final day as one of our best broadcasts to date. Notably, the European cell networks are robust and allow for high quality streaming. So, all of our experience there, helped us feel confident when talking to Matej and his team at the Euro Tour to say, okay, we'll put a couple more on the schedule. And we felt like it was the right time.
There's been some grumbling on social media about how late the announcement of the fact that these are going to be silver events and worth points towards the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship came. I'm not sure how convinced I am that some of those players would go over, but what do you say about that decision in terms of making those silver events and having those points count towards the DGPT Championship?
Well, I'll have a couple comments, but I'll start with saying that we are looking to grow European pro disc golf by bringing over our operation. We saw a great growth in subscribers when we went over. We saw the excitement of the players, and we're seeing a lot of the top players come over and play on the Disc Golf Pro Tour in the elite events and the silver events in the States. We're really trying to continue to build that bridge, right? So, this isn't necessarily a move aimed at, the bulk of the touring pros in the US. I think some, like Greg Barsby in the past, Philo, have had extended European tours where they played, Pro Forester, which actually is not going to be one of the events that we stream. But, there are going to be other opportunities if they want to extend their tours, around the edges. Åland Open, in the Åland Islands is the week after the European Open. And of course, PCS, there's an event right before PCS. So I think it's going to be, we're 5 months out from when these events start. So I think if people want to adjust their schedules, we're still in the preseason. We're still about a month before we kick off. And there's time to make those adjustments. But I understand that, sure, if we had the deal done and ready to announce public details in November or December, we certainly would have. But, there's certainly a lot of work behind the scenes that goes into an announcement of this sort, approvals across our entire organization and planning and knowing what to expect. So, I think on that front, we still have some announcements before the season starts, just about final changes to awards and points. And, we feel like it's fair game to, spend November, December, January, making some announcements about the upcoming season so people really know what to do. Sure, we're going to, keep doing our best to push that back earlier and earlier. But, this, I think, really is focused on European pros and the burgeoning pro scene there. We've seen a lot of the pros make the jump that are really at the top of the ranks. We're hoping that this encourages, more European disc golfers to play. There's going to be a lot of events that matter in Europe. And, just as the Pro Tour kind of ushered in a new age of people dedicating their life to professional disc golf, we're hoping to help bolster that effort in Europe. And, talking to, our colleagues and partners in Europe, I think a lot of them think, hey, we're on the edge of the European market growing to the point where maybe this is viable. Based on our results, we felt like, hey, let's do this now. We want to move forward. So, we're excited, and we think that the fans and the players will see this as a signal to get more involved and keep pushing.
There's obviously, sort of related to the discussion around the timing of the announcement here, there's been some discussion about whether Paul Macbeth is sort of getting an unfair advantage. Of course, he announced that he's going to be playing in a number of these Euro Tour events on his schedule that he released about a month ago. Did Paul know about this effort from the Pro Tour? And in particular, did he know that there were going to be silver points available at these events, which obviously sweetens the deal, especially for a player of his caliber, to go over and pick up, a lot of points. You look at last year, he almost won the outright points leader, but missed out perhaps because he didn't play a third silver event.
Yeah, so Paul did not know what he planned to schedule. I know that for a fact. I have spoken with Paul around the holidays and found out about what this is, which is a coincidence. I think that Paul was planning on a bigger European tour last year from what he's told me. But no, I was very surprised to hear. We were talking about something else, and he basically said, "Hey, I'm not going to be playing a lot of Pro Tour events this year. I want you to know." And I said, "Oh, that doesn't sound great. Why don't you play more?" And he said, I might not even play. He's not even playing enough, I think, Elite Series to qualify for all 8 events. I'm not quite sure, but he's not playing many, and I think that's been reported. And he said, "Well, I'm actually going to be playing some events in Europe." And I said, "Well, we're actually working with the Euro Tour, so we're going to put some events on Disc Golf Network and have some associated points. So perhaps there'll be some. I think there are some. I think he's also playing a European Pro Tour event." And his schedule was independent and set before he was aware of our plans, and our plans were almost final before we were aware of Paul's plans. So, I think that the driving commonality here is that the Pro Tour is focused on growing professional disc golf across the world, and it seems like Paul has a desire to also encourage growth. And from what I understand, his tour in Europe is certainly not focused on getting points. He's missing out on a lot of bigger point opportunities. He's already won a silver event. The most he can do in Europe, I think, probably is 2 more silver events because it's capped. It's capped at 3. So the most he can do is 100 more. If he stayed in the States, he would certainly have many more opportunities. I don't think that we really thought about, this coincidence being worth, changing our plans or him changing his. But we're happy that he'll be over there for some of them, and some of them he won't. And we're just as excited for the ones where he's coming back to the States and we keep going in Europe. So I'm excited for that, and we're talking about. What can we do collaboratively now to grow European disc golf, put more opportunities in front of the players, in front of the fans over there, and try to document what the experience is going to be like.
I want to follow up because you just mentioned the European Pro Tour, which I feel like I have to explain on the podcast because a lot of people maybe don't pay attention to what's going on in terms of the tours in Europe. But you have this PDGA Euro Tour, which is the events that you will be broadcasting on DGN and offering DGPT points at. There's also a separate tour, which kind of looks like a startup disc golf pro tour, but in Europe. Similar kind of thing. They have their own streaming service. They have their own set of events, trying to elevate the professionalism. In many ways, they kind of got started before this revamped Euro Tour came into being. From our understanding, there's a little bit of friction already between the PDGA Euro Tour folks and the people at the EPT. Understandably so. We've seen a similar dynamic over here in the States for quite a while, until really maybe this past year in some ways, between the PDGA and the DGPT. So how do you look at the European Pro Tour? Is this a competitor that you're working to go in and try to take over this European market? Do you see yourself trying to absorb them in the future? It's clearly a business decision to get over into Europe and offer streams, which is going to compete with this other streaming service and this other tour.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, speculation on what may or may not happen down the road. I'm probably not going to get too much into that, but I will say that one of the core values of our organization is collaboration, and I think we've shown that time and time again, whether it's with the players or the PDGA, a lot of entities, partners in the sport. We want to collaborate, and that's kind of our directive that I give to our staff, that I have from our board and ownership, is to collaborate. So, I think that with that spirit, I would anticipate, collaborations down the road. I can't say what they may or may not be, but I know that Juha and Miko and their team have done a great job getting things up and running over there. And I think it's important. I think we've seen the importance of pro tours in the United States and what that can do for the disc golf industry. It's one part. I love other parts of the disc golf industry too. I love local clubs and playing with my friends, but this is this is one part, and I think that was missing over there. I will say that the first time I interacted with Juha was in planning for 2021. He was a vendor for, or a planned vendor for the Euro Tour at that time, and so talking to Matej and said, "Hey, we want to come over and do an event. We want to do. We're talking about doing the European Open." And we're working with Natural Born Disc Golfer and BDG. So he said, Matej told me, hey, you're going to work with Juha and his team at BDG when you come over for PCS Sula. Now, of course, that was canceled. The whole season was canceled. And in the meantime, before 2022 got up and going, I think, they said, hey, we need to do more. We need to do something. We don't want to cancel. Much like, we did, but, without, contacting us, I think that the plans for the European Pro Tour were launched, which, as I mentioned, I think it sounds like it's been a great launch, great start, good for the pros. And, I wish nothing but success, really. So, but that happened after, the original planning for us coming over, and working with them. And so, you mentioned friction. I certainly can tell that there's a little bit of friction. I'll say that between the PDGA Europe and Natural Born Disc Golfer, who has now gone on to create the European Pro Tour, I think with the support of Prodigy Europe as I think their majority backer there. So, one thing is that, we are the official Pro Tour of the PDGA. So in working, on expanding our European coverage, that's kind of the channel that we're most, directed to go in. The official Pro Tour of the PDGA is not just, in US or North America. We actively have been talking to the PDGA about if a tour is going to become an elite series, we're going to be the ones, overseeing the tour and kind of making sure that they're hitting elite series standards and working with the PDGA to make sure the plans are kind of in place. So as the Euro Tour, kind of gets going here, we're looking at it from a couple different angles. I know that there have been attempts, at more communication, collaboration, I think on both sides. And I'm just hoping that we can serve to, bring people together. We've been a uniting force wherever we go, and we want to collaborate. And that said, I think the plans for this season are set. I just am excited for European disc golf to have more events and kind of follow in the footsteps of how the Pro Tour has evolved and hopefully create a bigger market. And, we think a lot about the saying, all ships rise with the tide. So hopefully this is a moment where there's growth and it's beneficial for everyone.
We've gotten a couple emails from listeners since the announcement regarding the company that will be helping with the live production of Pulsea. Couple of European listeners have said that Pulsea has done work in the past covering European events, and they were quite disappointed with the quality. How involved is the US DGN team going to be in that production?
I think everyone can trust and expect that this is going to be Disc Golf Network quality production. We're going to have appropriate oversight. We'll have people over in the studio training and working with the Pulsea team. Pulsea is the disc golf arm of Rockway Media, and Rockway has a very professional studio with probably more bells and whistles than the DGN studio outside of Milwaukee. And they've streamed a number of different sports professionally and well. I think that our experience in streaming specifically disc golf, having some of our camera ops over there. We're also working with More Disc Golf, and More Disc Golf actually will work with both the European Pro Tour and the Euro Tour, and do a lot of the filming for both. But we'll have camera ops, we'll have field producers, and folks in the studio. So we're really confident with what the setup is, and with Pulsea's experience and expertise. And we've been very happy with the professionalism and expertise that they bring to this point. But that said, we will make sure that our thumb is on the button and that we have proper oversight of these productions, and we have a good training plan, and even plan to get some filming in before the first event on our schedule.
What's the plan for commentary? Obviously DGN is almost always in English, but this audience for these tournaments may not be English speakers. So are you going to be doing Finnish commentary, multiple languages? Have you given thought to that?
We've given a little thought to it. So we did a Finnish language stream for the European Open last year, and it wasn't heavily listened to. So, we looked at the total amount of, Finnish listeners, watchers, and it was not even 10% actually listened to the Finnish stream. So that was surprising. And it is, slightly more expensive to do a second language stream. So, we're in the final decision-making process. I think right now we're leaning towards just an English stream. The commentators will be based out of Finland. Posea is based out of Helsinki, and the current plan is to have them commentate from the studio there. But we're working on our final lineup of commentators, and we're kind of looking through some options right now.
I guess the last question that I have then is about this subject in particular is, who was the driving force behind the implementation? I guess not implementation, but the decision to bring these streams. Was that Disc Golf Network, or was that PDGA Europe who approached and was the one who wanted and requested the stream to begin with?
I mean, this goes back a while, so it just seemed like a collaborative interest for a while here. But I can say that, as I mentioned, the desire to film and deliver live streams in Europe has been there for a long time for us. After last year, the Euro Tour made it clear that they would find a live streaming option. They're working on it. They contacted Posea and said, "Hey, we have a potential solution to bring you guys in." And so we said, okay, let's look at this. And so I think that it was really collaborative, but, I know that, let's just say the Disc Golf Network wasn't going to stream these Euro Tour events that we are live. They would be finding a different solution. I'm almost certain of that. So.
All right. So, just changing topics here as we get ready for the 2023 season. Always many, tides of change in these off seasons, and of course the Pro Tour has been growing at a huge clip. How many new people have you hired, going into this year?
We're slowing acceleration on hiring quite a bit, but we probably have hired 8 to 10 new people and shifted some people into different roles. I believe, I don't know where we're going to end up exactly, but between 45 and 50 employees headed into the season. I think the majority are full-time, but we do have some part-time and hourly employees. So, somewhere in that range.
So, how do you look at the 2023 season, and how will things be different? Maybe for the disc golf itself, if you think there's any changes there, but maybe even more importantly, on the tour side, are things starting to change from kind of the Jeff is everywhere doing everything kind of model that we've had since really the Steve Dodge era, to maybe something that looks more like, you're working and sort of overseeing and not doing as much on the road time?
Well, yeah, there has been a pretty big transition over the last 6 months, and probably for the next 6 months. We brought on Phil Delone as our assistant tour director, and he's going to be leading the road crew. And he'll be on the road for 9 months. The last 3 years, I've been on the road from February through November. So, it's been, it's hard, living on the road, from our players' perspective and our just anybody that's part of the Disc Golf Pro Tour that's touring full time. You got anywhere between probably 20 to 30 hours a week just figuring out how to live. And that's part of your job. And then, if you're a player, you're training and competing, recovering. And if you're, me or the tour staff, you're trying to keep up with, the many different balls that are up in the air, with whether it's future planning, executing tournaments, keeping up with communication, communicating with partners, so on and so forth. So I'm transitioning more to the CEO role in my title. I'm tour director and CEO, and I think it was, heavily weighted to tour director. Now it is weighted towards CEO, and there's a lot of, maturing that our startup is doing, trying to, and we've talked about this a little bit, on past with Todd, and as we kind of talked about the business side of the industry, just trying to grow up more, and really put in, a really solid business structure. And I feel really good about some of the folks that, we've brought on. We have a new VP of Business Administration. We have a new Director of Finance, and we also have a bigger operations staff that's going to be there on the road. It's really hard to hit every tournament as tour staff. So we're trying to cycle media ops and operations crews. So, they have maybe a week off here or there, and we advance, an event where we don't have everybody, at the event that's happening. We have a lot more people ahead getting ready for the next one and leapfrogging. So that strategy is taking a next step forward, and we're just looking for sustainability. And we feel like we've been dialing the sustainability knob up a little bit each year, where it feels a little less hectic. So, as we do that, and find stability, I think, our goals of growth continue. And, purses, the minimum purse now is $30,000. So purses will be up this year. I've added cash, 30K added at Elite and 15K at Silver. We have more events really than ever. We've changed from Silver Series to just Silver events. And, they're all part of, one tour. And then, we're launching pretty soon a qualifying tour as we kind of prepare more and more methods for people to make their way onto the Disc Golf Pro Tour, where it's not just like, oh, you have to play on the tour to be on the tour. No, now, there's going to be qualifiers for every event. There's going to be a qualifying tour getting you in there. And, of course, media, we're excited to announce more media plans in the upcoming weeks. Our entire media plan and our subscription plan for the year will be coming out soon. And I think we'll have some newsworthy announcements.
I want to quickly ask about the qualifying tour.
Yeah.
You have the events picked?
Yeah, we're in the final process of locking them. We have a lot, we had a lot of entries, and we can't take them all. But, we're really weighting this towards the second half of the season, and into the off season, with a championship, that will award tour cards for players. So I think, our strategy this year is to, allow players, to really see where they're falling if they're playing on the Disc Golf Pro Tour, where their standings are, and still have time to maybe shift towards the qualifier if they feel like they're not going to qualify based on Disc Golf Pro Tour points. So, that announcement's, in the hopper, and we're just waiting on some final communication with some events. So,
I know the industry convention is coming up shortly. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that convention and that event?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we're coming down to the last spot. So we've got about 25 spots left if people want to register. But the industry conference is really, I'm thrilled about it. We've been talking about it for years. And it's at the beautiful El Conquistador Resort in Tucson, Arizona. It's part of All-Star Weekend. So if you come and are part of it, you'll get time in with the players. You'll get to spectate the event. But really, what we're doing is bringing in some of the leaders in the industry and some outside the industry as well, to just talk about, the main topics. If you're a retailer, if you're a manufacturer, if you're a business, if, you're even some players are going to be coming, if you're an event director, or if you just have any business in the sport, if you're in the industry, this conference is really to bring us all together to listen to everybody in the industry and hear what people are saying, but also to present from some leaders, whether it's manufacturing, or retail. We have a retail track. We've got, the growth, future of the industry, as part of a topic. And then of course we're going to have some fun. We're going to do a pro-am with some of the pros that are coming to play in the All-Star event, and we're gonna get some golf in. And man, that resort is just wonderful. So we've locked in really low rates, and like I said, we're keeping it small. Overall, we can't have really more than 125 people. We might push that. So we don't have too many spots left, but there are about 20, 25 spots. We're hoping to fill those and get up to that 125 mark. So you can go on the Disc Golf Pro Tour website if you're interested. I think we've been posting about it. Our marketing director, Zach, is doing a great job leading that. And I'm excited to speak. Andrew Zimmern will be there to speak about his experience with the growth of disc golf and his experience in professional media. Charlie will be on a panel. We'll have a lot of Jonathan Gomez will be there. Yeah, Steve Dodge, some representatives from the PDGA and some manufacturers, event directors. So come on out. I could probably keep going, but I'll stop there.
All right, Jeff. Well, thanks so much for giving us some time, and we're certainly looking forward to getting this disc golf season started.
All right. Thanks for having me, Josh, Charlie.
Welcome back to the Upshot. So just as a matter of completeness, just wanted to mention the events that the DGN will be streaming from Europe. That's the Konopiste Open starting June 16th, Krokol Open in Norway, Swedish Open, Skellefteå Open, Åland Open, Aludaguse Open. I don't know if I got that one right. Andalusia Open. I do know I got that one right. Spanish a little easier than Estonian. And so those events run June, July, and then the last two are in August and then October. That's the last one also being the Tour Championship. So, Josh, you heard what Jeff had to say. I think the logic of this move is very sound. I mean, it seems like an obvious thing for DGN to try to continue to expand its coverage of all things disc golf as they try to have year-round coverage as much as possible and pull in new subscribers. What are your thoughts on this decision from the Pro Tour and then the timing of the decision and the announcement?
I really do think that the timing is a coincidence. I don't think that. But here's really what I think. I think that Paul probably, Jeff alludes to the different things that they were planning on doing in 2021 and then in 2022. And so I think Paul had to have had a semblance that the Pro Tour was working its way over. And the increased payouts and legitimacy of the Pro Tour over there, I think Paul probably felt like it was a matter of time before something like this happens. But, I mean, that's not... I don't find it inconceivable that Paul would tour in Europe even without the prospect of it being on DGN and worth silver points.
I mean, I can tell you it's a simple fact that he was planning to do a bigger tour in Europe last year because he was going over there for the foundation. And then it ended up, I forget what the reason was, but the timing wasn't quite right. So he didn't do quite as much as he anticipated and wasn't over there as long as he anticipated. But, this is not a surprise. And it also just feels like Macbeth understands that international disc golf is going to be the next leg of growth.
Yes, that's very apt.
Think about what he's doing with the foundation, right?
Right, exactly. And that's the other thing is like Paul's not going to change his schedule because some silver event opportunities popped up somewhere. Likewise, though, I don't think the Pro Tour is going to incorporate some events because Paul called them and said, "Hey, I'm going to Europe. I want them to be worth something." So neither of those.
To be honest, it's completely ridiculous that that's even like a concept.
It is. I don't see the conspiracy. I think it is unfortunate timing, but it is what it is. I think what's more unfortunate is just like it feels like So this announcement, changing and adding events to the silver event schedule. I hate that I can't use the word series. The silver event schedule. Less than a month out from the start of the season. It feels a little rushed. And then for Jeff to say, yeah, we've got more announcements coming with like points and awards and stuff. That's probably going to get fans more heated, or it's probably going to get players more heated than even just the announcement of these European silver events. So, I mean, whatever. I guess pick up the timing. I think it should come out a little earlier. I'm really interested, though, the other side of this, and it's something that I've been kind of stewing on. Jeff said the Pro Tour is the tour of the PDGA. And like last year it was, but before that it sure wasn't, right? Like the competition between the National Tour and the Pro Tour, it was one of the most common points of discussion about professional disc golf and about what the tour is going to do. And so it is, but it's also odd the way that we have the emergence last year of this new European Pro Tour, and then all of a sudden Disc Golf Network is over there and helping support and increase the professionalism and live stream the PDGA Euro Tour.
And, this is obviously a massive threat to the European Pro Tour. There's no way around that. You're going to have, if you're a big fan of European disc golf, if you're over in Europe, we have plenty of European listeners.
Yeah.
Now you're kind of pulled, like, do you get both subscriptions? I think maybe you do. If you want to watch all these tournaments, like I was looking at some registration pages, the European Pro Tour events are pretty well attended. Like I haven't done a full, like, all in analysis here, but just like looking at a couple of the early ones, the EPT events are going to have a lot of really good players, more so than some of the early Euro Tour events. I think that this doesn't necessarily decide anything. I think so. I've talked to some people even who feel like, oh, this is the death knell for EPT. Goodbye. Good. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time. I'm not sure that I feel that way yet. The PDGA doesn't exactly have the like sterling reputation for running like really professional elite events. And it's not like the Pro Tour is going to be like running these tournaments. That's not happening. Europe, totally separate world. I have really no idea what's going on there, but I know that there's been, TDs have had issues in the past working with the PDGA over there. And that's been part of the impetus behind the creation of the EPT. But then you have the kind of this conflict there. I mean, Jeff straight up told us, like, there's definitely friction. And so what does that mean for EPT? DGN is starting to have network effect where it's like, well, I can just get that DGN subscription. And, maybe it's not worth getting the Disc Golf Stream 1-2 because I'm only going to get to watch these, 7-8 events versus I get everything that's on DGN, including all the American tournaments. And of course, a lot of the top European players are playing in a lot of those tournaments. So that's a powerful tool. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like Netflix versus Apple TV, where like Apple TV has like one show you want to watch, but Netflix has everything. Maybe Netflix, I don't know. People hate Netflix now. I don't know what's going on.
Netflix in like 2019 had everything.
Run it back a couple of years back. The streaming wars. I mean, we're having our own streaming wars now, right? Like this is like a salvo from DGN into Europe. And I could imagine that the Pro Tour is hoping to consolidate all of that European coverage onto DGN, even if they don't run the tournaments as a long-term goal. I mean, it seems obvious enough, right?
I think so too. The real question I think that you highlight there is, to what extent is the Disc Golf Pro Tour going to be involved, and how is that going to affect the quality of the PDGA Euro Tour as a viable product? If the tournaments are poorly run, if the broadcast quality isn't up to the DGN level that Jeff said it would be, all of those things could play factors in the ability for the Euro Tour to succeed, as well as for the European Pro Tour. It's going to be something that's really interesting to watch. I don't think this story is fully written. It's definitely going to be an evolving story throughout the year, because the European Pro Tour has also been ones who promised higher purses and better payouts. And that's going to play a big role in how you attract people and get them to play. Yeah. And so there are a lot of competing factors, both in media, tournament quality, and payouts, that are going to determine where the professionals play. If you're a European player, though, you have to be over the moon about this announcement, because it gives you the opportunity, whichever tour events you want to play are going to be live streamed now, increases your ability to get networking, increases your publicity, increases sponsorship opportunities for you to advance to a higher level of the game. The European players who play primarily in Europe are going to greatly benefit from the competition between the two tours. And, as Jeff said, in the sense that, Jeff used the analogy that I think is almost been used enough that it can be copyright by disc golf, is the rising tide raises all ships. It's interesting to me because I don't think that's the case necessarily for the European Pro Tour here. I think it's, that's been the logic and the philosophy over in the United States about a lot of things, but I don't think that's necessarily true in this case. But for European players, whichever side succeeds in this competition, they're going to benefit.
Right. That's totally true. And the competition itself is going to yield bigger purse increases more quickly. Like, Europe's playing catch up, let's be honest. You have a lot of really good base factors for success in Europe. Huge participation, per capita in a number of these countries, particularly in Northern Europe. Tons of courses, really high course quality, lots of really motivated organizers. And now you're seeing money and media finally catching up to all of this potential.
Yeah.
And so it's still going to lag the US for maybe forever, certainly for a long time. But the seeds are there for European disc golf to eventually even overtake the US in terms of popularity of the sport there, because I think there's some geographic and perhaps environmental challenges. It's in Finland, you can't really play for many months of the year, at least in an enjoyable way. So that's potentially a challenge, but it's also everyone knows about disc golf in Finland. It's on national television. So that's pretty interesting. And I think long term, this is going to be a fascinating story to follow. Whether, there's a lot of demand to watch these events. I mean, I think Macbeth helps, but if it's just a random European tournament happening at the same time as an Elite Series, which many of these dates do conflict with tournaments happening in the US, I'm not going to be watching. I mean, I there's already too much disc golf to watch. I can't also follow the whole European tour.
I will admit, though, so despite, I always forget that Konopiste was a major one year, which I still think was a little bit ridiculous. But anyway.
It's not ridiculous. I mean, it's the way that they used to give out majors was, I don't really think was great. But
right.
Anyway,
that's my point. Anyway, but it's a gorgeous course, and I love watching coverage from Konopiste. It happens this year to fall over DDO. I'm probably going to watch Konopiste if I'm being really honest. I'll just keep an eye on UDisc for DDO and then watch Konopiste live. That's kind of what I'm planning on. I'm not super familiar with the other events, but I do know Konopiste. And so I see your point, though, that it's going to be interesting to see the demand because the time zone issue, right? I don't know what time I'm going to have to watch that event. And I say I'm going to watch it now, but I guess we'll see if I am interested enough to stay up that late to watch it or get up that early. So there are challenges. There are challenges to getting a primarily US based subscriber base. But obviously this is a drive to try and increase the European side. So, but then it's also the commentaries in English. And so,
I mean, if the people aren't watching it when you put it in Finnish, I mean, most Europeans they speak fluent English.
They do. Bilingual, trilingual.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. We're the rubes over here in the US.
I mean, you've heard that joke, right? Someone who speaks 3 languages is trilingual. Someone who speaks 2 is bilingual. Someone who speaks 1 is American.
I haven't heard that, but I like that.
Oh.
Okay. Let's, certainly email us if you have thoughts on this. We've already gotten some emails from European listeners, mostly talking about how Pulsea has done a poor job with their streaming opportunities in the past. And the EPT folks in Natural Born Disc Golfer have been the premier streaming company over there. But, when you got DGN coming in and they got a lot of money to throw at it and they want to make sure that it's good enough, upgrading equipment it's not impossible. It can be done. And you can solve the cellular, graininess quality problems that they were dealing with last year. So we'll see. it's reasonable to be concerned about it, I think, if you're a European disc golf fan. But again, this is clearly a step in the right direction for disc golf on that continent. If you have thoughts, hit us up, upshot@ultiworld.com. Okay, Josh, time to look at some players to watch for 2023. So where do you want to start? Because we got a bunch of categories to get to. I'll let you make the pick.
Let's start with our Player of the Year podium.
All right.
I think that's right at the top. Let's just take that out.
We're gonna pick our 3 top players for Player of the Year, assuming that there was a kind of a podium finish. If you had to rank the top 3 in the race, we're prognosticating for 2023. So, Josh, let's start in FPO. Your 3, 2, 1 in that order. Who you got?
So in my 3, I have Henna Blomroos.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I really think that there are a couple of options here. A handful of options that really could, I think, fill the 3 slot. A couple European women, but also some Americans. Valerie Mandujano, Katrina Allen. Those are 2 that come to mind.
Do not slander Owen Scoggins. Don't do it.
And Owen Scoggins, thank you. Yes, yes. The Owen Doggins 2022 Player of the Year. But I think Henna, despite the putting woes, showed us at the beginning of the season, it was all about Evelina. And Evelina had some of the higher performances, and then the putting woes that followed. And we were Evelina. But towards the end of the season, Henna showed us a ceiling that may outpace even Evelina's. The way that Henna is able to throw the disc is exceptional, and I guess it's really a question, if you're looking at the Europeans, of who fixes their putter first. And I don't really have an answer to that one, but if either of them can increase their putting even slightly, they both are just top level threats to win every tournament. And I had a lot of confidence and a lot of, I was really impressed by Henna's performance, particularly at Worlds. And I think that's going to translate to success this year. That's why I've got her in my number 3 spot.
I'll go to my number 3 because I think it's perfect timing. I have Evelina in my 3 spot. Now, obviously, you have some of the same clear deficiencies in the game from last year that Henna has had. But there's so many things. Like, I think Evelina overall has showed the higher level of skill and versatility of really any players in the world outside of Paige, Kristen, and maybe Katrina. Like, it is that high of a quality. And how many times on the show this year, or I should say last year, in 2022, did we talk about Evelina was number 1 tee to green and dead last putting? Like, that was like 7 times or something. Like, it was constantly happening where she was easily the best player in the field from tee to green and simply could not make her putts. So I think that Evelina, because also she can throw forehand. Henna has no forehand. None.
That is true.
That's a problem. That's a limitation. I think, you're starting to see that become an issue, even for a player like Paige Pierce. Paige Pierce is kind of like a utility forehand, but doesn't want to throw it that much. And doesn't throw it particularly well, and it causes her problems. And then you look at Kristen Tatar, and she's parking holes regularly with her forehand. So I think that, yes, players can get away with not having one of the throws, right? We see there are many players on tour who almost entirely throw either backhand or forehand and are successful. James Conrad has won multiple majors. But a week in, week out basis, missing that whole element of the game is a problem. It does hold you back. It does make it harder to get some holes that are easy for the people who throw on the other side. So to me, Evelina's got the potential to truly rise to literally Player of the Year. I don't know if she's going to solve the putting, but it gives me hope that she understands it's a problem. She is working on it. She's focusing entirely on disc golf now and is looking at that as her career and not something that she does during the summer months. And she's still incredibly young. Those things to me, I think she's going to get a podium spot this year. we'll see. The putter could continue to be a huge problem, and it will hold her back if she doesn't get better. But she doesn't have to get amazing. She just has to get solid, just average, and she can win tournaments. So that's where I'm going with 3.
For reference, Evelina finished at the 11 spot last year, and Hannah finished at the 15. So that's
Hannah played better down the stretch of the season. Evelina was better start to finish.
Week in, week. Yeah, I think so too. So, but it'll be interesting to watch that battle. I mean, we don't think of it as a battle often because they both suffer from the same woes and are on the same team, and we think of them very similar in a lot of ways. But it is a battle that we're gonna be watching.
Yep.
All right. In my 2 spot, I have Paige Pierce, and there's less for me to say about my 2 spot than there is about my 1 spot. I think Paige is going to have another successful season. I think the only thing I have to say about why Paige isn't in the 1, I could list a million reasons why she is in the 2, right? Or could be in the 1. But the big thing that I am concerned about going into next season is the state of her attitude towards the game. There were stretches this season where she came out and said, I don't feel the drive to win. I don't feel the drive to push myself. She is so talented, she's going to win anyway. But stretches like that just make me and it happened, I mean, the season before. Remember, we were talking about is like Paige Pierce's reign done before she went to Hawaii and came back and then won 4 straight. There are stretches of the season over the past 2 years that Paige has suffered from a lack of focus, determination, drive, whatever you want to call it, that have impacted her on-course performance. And an award that is week in and week out, that makes me concerned for Paige's ability to take the top spot. She's ultra talented. She'll probably win majors. She's going to win events. She's going to be on the podium, but that's why she's in my 2 spot.
So you're taking Kristen at number 1.
So I'm taking Kristen at number 1. And the one point I want to make about Kristen then, again, we could belabor these points for hours. But the big thing I want to point out about Kristen is that her success is different than a success of like Simon Lizotte, for example. If Simon regresses to the mean, it means he wins 1 or 2 events and it still has a pretty successful season. But, winning 4 probably was a little bit of an overperformance for Simon. Maybe we're wrong, but that's how I feel. That's not the case. Like Kristen's season, a regression to the mean still is a phenomenal season. And the biggest limitation that she risks is how much she actually plays. She only beats Paige by 80 points, but didn't play a significant number of events. She's already slated to miss LVC, will be starting her season at Waco. If she doesn't miss events due to illness or health and her injury, besides LVC, and plays her full planned season, even if it is less than Paige, she has room to digress and still could take the number 1 spot. That it's just so hard for me to argue with that, given how consistently amazing Kristen was. And it feels replicable. I mean, some of those really did, even though they were blowout wins, that it did not feel like it was particularly lucky or flashy. Like, I really think Kristen could have another season very equal in level to what it was last year.
Don't disagree with anything you said, but I have Paige at number 1 and I have Kristen at number 2. And I'll tell you why. The thing about what you said about Paige, it's valid. But there's a thing that's underlying the whole situation that I want to point out. Okay. Paige has struggled with motivation, and think about why that might be. She has not had someone who is truly at her level competing for Player of the Year against her for real in a long time. Katrina has been that foil a little bit, but it really hasn't been that close most years. Most years, Paige has truly dominated. I mean, even when people ridiculously voted for Missy Gannon to win Player of the Year 2 years ago, like Paige was still the better player. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the flashy pick. It was people are tired of Paige's dominance, but she was still easily the better player statistically. It wasn't even close. And so last year is really the first time in a long time that it really felt like Paige was straight up outplayed and had no chance to win Player of the Year. Even though, by the way, she won more majors than Kristen last year. So you think about that, and you think about the fact that there is a little bit of, you have to admit it, there is some injury concern for Kristen. We don't know how she's going. She just got back on the course. Like she hasn't played for a couple of months. She literally just played her first round like last week. She posted this on Instagram. I think that those things combine for me, not to knock Kristen off the podium, because I think that you're right, that even with regression, she's still going to succeed. But I do think Paige will have a newfound motivation. I want to be the player of the year. Now, she did win PDGA player of the year, but I don't want to get into that crazy. Every year, that's drama. At the end of the day, Paige has the tools, especially if she works on her forehand, to be number one in the world for years to come. I get it. People a lot of people don't like Paige. A lot of people want to see her fail. A lot of people are rooting against her because they don't like her attitude or they're just sick of her winning. But at the end of the day, she has the skills. She can throw it further than Kristen. Her putting, when she is on, she might be the best putter behind Owen on tour. Like, I don't know if that's statistically true year in and year out, but like we see her get going, like she's just unbelievable from Circle 2 in particular. So I think Kristen could absolutely back up last year and win again, but I'm going to take Paige because of those confluence of factors. I think she will have motivation because she has someone to beat.
Everything you said is 100% spot on. I'm really, but how exciting that this is the case for the FPO side of the sport now, where even a couple of years ago, we were trying to find reasons to knock Paige that led to, I know for my part, some really terrible takes, because it was just like you were trying to find a storyline,
grasping at straws.
Yeah, you were trying to find a reason to root against Paige. You were trying to find here's why maybe it isn't her. And so you'd make stuff up and you'd say things that you're like, maybe this is the case. And then she'd win 4 in a row and you're like, man, I don't know anything. And actually we do know something. It's that Paige is amazing. And so it's so nice now to be able to say Paige can play excellent golf and still might lose. Yeah, she really might have to play her best golf if she wants to take Player of the Year.
And you think about Kristen, there's also the other players coming into the mix. Does Maria Oliva take a step forward this year? Paige Shu's back on tour. You have all of these players who are in that kind of 1 to 15 range who could continue to improve their game, and we might see something more like MPO, where there's not that player that's just winning the majority of the events. You look back over the last few years, there's usually a player, it's often been Paige, last year was Kristen, that wins the majority of the tournaments. That doesn't happen in MPO. Yep. Winning 4 events in a season is a huge success in MPO. Winning like 6 would be like, wow, incredible. What an unbelievable year. So
did Ricky win 5 last year?
With the Tour Championship, I think that was 5, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
because he had 4 regular seasons. So anyway, let's get to MPO. I'll start in my 3 spot. I'm going with Chris Dickerson. I'm calling for a kind of a bounce back season from Chris. He's playing more. He's planning to travel to Europe, because remember last year he skipped the West Coast swing, didn't go to Europe, and missed out as a result on a lot of points and opportunities. And he was kind of up and down with his play. He won Champions Cup, so he got a major, but he also was, it's kind of shaky. But we're not that far removed from him winning Player of the Year.
Yep.
I think he can get back into this spot. And so I'm going to take Chris Dickerson. He wasn't that far from being a top 3 Tour points finisher this past year. I think if he played more, he would have had a good chance to do it. But he got beat out by Chris Dickerson, by Calvin Heimberg. He beat himself. Epic clones. So I'm taking C-Dick to get back into the top 3.
Okay. My 3 spot, and I just know I'm going to get flack for this. My 3 spot is Mr. Paul Macbeth.
Wow.
And look, this is not in any way a knock on Paul, his game, or his abilities. This is pure and simple math, in my opinion. He is going to get all 3 silver events this year, but he is playing exactly 8 tour events plus the 2 playoffs. Last year, he had 3 finishes outside the top 15, where a possible 100 points only counted for about 30. And one of the events that he's skipping this year, the Portland Open, is an Elite Plus with a possibility of 150 points that he's not going to be able to capture this year. If Paul plays at the exact same level that he did last year, in terms of his finishes, but doesn't get to drop anything, Paul does not win Player of the Year. If Paul even levels up a little bit, but doesn't get to drop anything, Paul probably doesn't win Player of the Year. And so mathematically, I just think it's going to be really hard for Paul to overcome that deficiency. It's going to require him to, and now we're talking about Paul, it probably win multiple majors.
Agreed.
As well as perform incredibly well at D-Glow and MVP, both of which are playoff events and worth extra points. If he does that, I think he stands a good chance at Player of the Year. But I think he's setting himself up with a very difficult schedule for this award, which is, by the way, an award he has stated multiple times he doesn't care about. Now, does he not care about it because he doesn't care about it? Does he not care about it because he doesn't get it? Either way, I'd probably a little bit of both. I don't think this is his priority, but I think he has set himself up in a way mathematically that it's going to be very difficult for him to win Player of the Year.
It's interesting. I think he could. I think what you're describing is a great reason not to pick him to win the Tour Points title. But I think he could still win Player of the Year if he wins 2 or 3 majors and finishes 5th in Tour Points. I think he could still win Player of the Year. Now,
I think 3 majors.
I think I wanted to pick Macbeth to win Player of the Year in 2023. But I didn't do it. I have him in the 2nd spot. And the reason is basically what you just described, which is that the margins are going to be very thin for him. And the fact is, you're going up against a guy in Ricky who's going to give himself a lot more chances to win Elite Series events because he's going to play a lot more of them. There's 13 Elite Series plus the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And you got Ricky probably going to play every single one, maybe skip one. And so I think that is going to be challenging because I think it's still possible for Macbeth to do it, but you can't have an off, like if he doesn't win at least 2 majors, it's going to be really hard to get to that point unless he just is, totally plays out of his mind at the Elite Series, which of course is possible, but it's harder and harder these days to win these tournaments. So I've got him in my 2 spot. I have Ricky in my 1. I assume you do too, but tell us.
So I have Calvin in my 2 spot. So this I don't have Chris Dickerson. I've got
you have
Calvin.
Paul in your 3. I'm sorry.
Paul in the 3, Calvin in the 2. Yep. So Calvin in my 2 spot. I don't know what it is. I know last year and the year before that, I picked Calvin all the time, and he just broke my heart over and over and over. And he might do it again this year. But there is something about Calvin, and when Calvin is on, he is the one. He can be the best in the world when Calvin is on. It's especially, we see his circle 1 putting, and especially edge of circle, short circle 2. That statistic can get a little shaky, but when that's going well, he just got paid. He got his 5-year contract. He is focused on the golf, and that's something that I think is going to be just a big advantage for him. He doesn't have to think about contracts. He doesn't have to think about those negotiations. He gets to focus on winning, and he's not doing school anymore. There are a lot of factors that I think set this up that Calvin may have a real year of just opportunity to succeed and thrive. And it's not like Calvin hasn't made the podium. He was on the podium last year. He was 3rd on the Disc Golf Pro Tour standings points. 2021, he was 3rd. 2020, he was 2nd in Disc Golf Pro Tour points. So he is consistently at the top. He plays well at tournaments, gets a couple wins. I hope Calvin is able to take down a major this year.
That's what it's going to come down to.
But I agree. I think if he wins the major, I really think he has the opportunity to be up there on the podium because he's consistent enough everywhere else. So
I mean, I have Chris Dickerson over Calvin in the 3 spot, primarily because I think I can trust Chris to win majors, and I haven't had a chance to really feel like I've seen that from Calvin yet.
Yep.
Doesn't mean he's not capable. He could win the whole player of the year. He's got the skills, but I got to see it.
Got to see it. But in my number 1 spot, along with you, is Ricky Wysocki. I just think Ricky builds his schedule in a way. He always talks about how important this award is to him, how much he wants this award. I think it's because the way that Ricky approaches professional touring life is very conducive to winning this award. He plays a lot of events. He plays well at a lot of events. He has events where he just wins all the time. Texas States, he's won, 5 years in a row now? Ledgestone, he is consistently at the top. He has events that he wins. He plays well elsewhere, and he just plays so much that it sets him up well to win the player of the year in and year out. He won it last year for that reason, and I think he's pretty likely to win it again this year.
Just an incredibly well-rounded game. Best scrambler on tour, elite forehand, great backhand, killer putter, has a year with the new discs now. There's just no reason he can't continue to do what he did last year, which was not win a major and yet still win player of the year, pretty much consensus because of the level of play that he brought, to every tournament in the year. So yep. I think I have Ricky number 1 as well. And it's just hard for me to see him tailing off yet. We haven't really seen any evidence that things are going to get worse. In fact, I think if anything, he's set up to play even better this year. So there you go.
Think Ricky wins a major this year?
We're in Vermont for Worlds, back at WR Jackson. I'm going to say yes on the over-under half. I think he's going to get one.
Okay. Speaking of Vermont and Worlds, Charlie, I booked my flights to Vermont today.
Oh, let's go, Josh. I'm going to be there. Josh is going to be there. We're going to do some live on-site recording of the Upshot. I can't wait. That's going to be amazing.
It's going to be so fun. So fun.
All right.
To our next player of the year podium.
Yeah, to our next category, we're going to go to Young Guns, players under the age of 25 that we are excited to watch in 2023. So I will kick us off with Nicholas Antila. He had that great finish at USDGC. I think he's, certainly among the most exciting European players, if not the most exciting of all, besides Simon. Always got to give the caveat. I'm excited to see what he can do with that. I think it's got to be a big confidence boost coming off of USDGC.
Well, I've got another guy who got a big confidence boost from USDGC. That's Gannon Burr. I am excited that he is not in school this year. Because remember, the couple of times we interviewed him, he's like, yeah, I'm going to spend this week catching up on homework. He doesn't have to do that anymore. He gets to just focus on disc golf. Is it possible that Gannon has an even better year? I mean, his consistency was already top level, but wins a couple Elite Series, already got a major under his belt. The sky's the limit for this kid, and I think he's got even more opportunity going into this year. I
mean, I think he has just as... There's a chance he should have been on the Player of the Year podium list instead of the Young Guns list. Could certainly be on both. My next one, I'm just going to go ahead and double up. They're attached at the hip. Henna and Evelina. We both have them in our Player of the Year podiums. And just like I put them on this list primarily because I want to remind you how young they are. They are still in their early 20s. They're just so good that they've been around for years at this point on the tour. So I think that this feels like a big year for them. Whether it goes in the right direction or the wrong direction, it feels like it's going to be an important season for their development.
The next one, he's almost aged out of our Young Guns category, but not quite there. I've got Vino Makala. you have to remember the success that Vino has had.
He's 24. It's another one of these players where you're like, wow, he's only 24.
Right. And it's I think easy to forget the success that Vino has had in Europe prior to starting the tour in the United States. I mean, Nicholas Antela, very successful as well, but I mean, Vino Makala has just as high, I think, of a skill ability. And if he's able to settle in, I really think there are a lot of opportunities for him. And I'm just excited for Vino. I'm excited to see, and I think he's going to be an important one to watch. In 2021, he had a handful of wins over in Europe, including the Finnish Nationals. And so I just don't sleep on Vino. I think Nicholas got a lot of attention thanks to his late push and the USDG, the late push in the season at his success at USDGC. But Vino deserves attention too.
My next is Kat Murch. Kat Murch, of course, coming off of her career best year, took a big step forward in 2022, and I don't see why that can't continue in 2023. Lots of all-around skill. Like to see her add a little bit of distance, but just think her game is going in the right direction right now. This player you got to keep an eye on.
My last in the Young Guns category is Haley King. This year is going to be, I think, a very telling year for Haley King. She switches, does the 1 year with Innova, plays some events, but has lots of reasons for not playing most of the tour. And we really didn't see a lot of Haley. Still wins a major, mind you. So still plays very well. Very talented disc golfer. It's going to be really interesting to see how much she tours this season. I think she's going to be an important one to watch because she is young and has the skills to be in the conversation of player of the year again if she plays all season.
I need to see her actually show up and compete. I got to be honest.
That's the question.
I agree.
That's the question.
Monstrously high ceiling. Probably the most promising American player under 25. I think it's that simple. I think my last one on the list is Maria Oliva. The power is there. We've seen flashes of the skill. She's leading U.S. women's this year. Making the switch of the bag, going over to Thought Space, open bag. I kind of like that. I think that we're going to see more companies offering this option because it lets players pick the disc that they feel that they can be most successful with. That's important. So I think that could be a real boost for Oliva. Let's see if she can translate that into on-course performance. Moving on to our next category, we're going to go to new bag, who dis? Who's got a new bag that we're excited to watch this year and see how they do with it? Josh, take it away.
Yeah, I heard about this sponsorship thing with this guy named Simon, I guess, who got a new bag. Simon's going to be the big one to watch. He's coming off of the best year of his career, getting 4 Elite Series wins, and now gets the monster deal. Now the question is, can he figure out what Prism Plasma plastic is? That's the question we've got, right? Can he figure out this plastic? Can he adjust his game to a new bag when he's been throwing the same company for 10 years? It's going to be an adjustment, but given the way Simon played last year and how he's playing now in the post-injury era, I think it's going to be interesting to watch him adjust to a bag as well. Obviously, it has to be the number one to watch of the changes in manufacture this year.
I'm going to go with Paige Shue. Back on tour and with a brand new bag, going to Discraft and the unique flights that they offer. Paige Shue going to be, can she compete at the top level in FPO still? I think that remains an open question. If she can add some distance, that's going to be a big, factor in her favor. Lots of skill in and around the green, and excited to see her back on tour.
My next pick is Anthony Barella. Another player getting to change bags, a young player with a very high ceiling who's shown some great performances. Going to be playing with Discraft now. It's just another one that I really think has an opportunity to thrive in a new environment, who could really benefit from a sponsorship change. The question is, can he make that adjustment after he's been throwing Innova for so long? It feels like Anthony Barella's been throwing Innova as long as Simon's been throwing Discmania.
Just about. It was 9 years.
True, but it's 9 years. Yeah, so almost. Yeah, I was 1 year off. long time. And it's always interesting to see when those long-time players switch sponsors and have to adjust to new plastic.
I'm going to go next with Valerie Mondahano. A switch last year, a switch again this year, now with Discraft. Can she continue to improve the game? I mean, she had such an amazing start. You know, we're talking about her as part of the Big Four at the beginning of last season. Didn't quite match that production down the stretch of the year. Still clearly a top 5 player in 2022. An opportunity perhaps to take that next step forward into the conversation with the Pages and the Katrinas and the Kristens. So big season coming up for her. How does she adjust to the new bag?
Holland Hanley is getting her next sponsor. Holland's first was with, she was with the Dynamic Discs. Took that sponsorship very early when she started getting serious about disc golf. This will be her, the first switch that she's made since becoming a professional player. I think someone who's that new to the game is going to be able to adjust well, but this is the year that Holland needs to step up, and I think has the opportunity to get a win. Otherwise, I mean, she's got time, but as the game continues to get more and more competitive, more and more players enter, it feels like if Holland is the real deal, she really needs to show it this year. So definitely a player to watch.
And finally, I'm going to go with everyone who's signed with Lone Star. The hundreds of you. But of course, some of the big name pros, Nico, Emerson. I think that it's going to be pretty interesting to see, how do the players adjust to getting new discs like during the season. There's like these new discs coming out from Lone Star like all the time. They're just like creating so many new molds. That's obviously going to be a huge storyline because they have kind of an interesting mix of players in terms of their top level sponsorship. A lot of buzz right now. How does that all hold up? Do we feel like we're seeing success from those folks, or are we going to start to hear grumblings about this or that thing? It's one of the top stories heading into the year. So lots of new bags out there for Team Lone Star. Last category, here we go. Surprising stars. Who is going to surprise us? And really, we put this kind of like in relation to their past performance, because I think there are players who are maybe even in the top 20 who you could argue could surprise us by finishing, 10 spots higher or something like that. Arguably, Valerie Mondahano surprised us last year, or Owen Scoggin surprised us last year. So, yeah. Josh, surprising star number 1, who do you got?
I've got Brody Smith at the top of my surprising stars. Yeah. Look, Brody finished 46th in his first year on tour in 2021. Last year, he jumps up to 27th. Brody is a natural athlete who has been around disc sports for decades and is not been in the sport that long and has been making progress and significant progress over the years that he's been involved. I think the biggest thing working against him is his age. He's definitely in the older group, but there is no reason why Brody couldn't come out if he's working in the offseason like he says he does, that he could improve to being even a top 10 player on tour. And I think that's what it would have to be for him to be a surprising star, but I think it's not impossible.
I'm going to go with Tristan Tanner. Tristan really showed us a couple times last year how high his ceiling is. I want to see him put it together with more consistency over the course of a year. I mean, he could be the 2023 Gavin Rathbun, where it's like, wow, this guy's like been good all season, week in and week out. And obviously Gavin's been dealing with the injury, but 2021 season, like Gavin was a big part of the conversation. I think Tristan has a chance to do that. So he's first on my list.
Next one on my list is Linus Carlson. I think a lot of people wrote, is it Linus?
Yep.
Linus? Linus. Okay. Linus Carlson. I think a lot of people wrote Linus off because of a pretty poor start to the season. Among the European players, he even, his standards, playing a lot of like sub 50 finishes, sub 40 finishes. And that's, easy then to kind of forget about him, especially with some of the other Europeans around. But here's the thing that we've got to remember. Ready? Butler County, 3rd. GMC, 8th. MVP Open, 5th. The end of his season.
Turns out when he get into the woods, he's got it.
Fantastic. Well, guess what's in the woods this year? Worlds. He's got Champions Cup. After being a year on tour, I think while there is a lot of hype around Vino and Nicholas, from us especially, and it's well-deserved, I think Linus could surprise us this season.
I've got Alden Harris. I don't know if he quite qualifies as somebody for this list because I think maybe he already had his surprising year this year or in 2022. But I just think that we might see him take another step forward and become a guy that becomes more of a household name instead of someone if you're kind of like a hardcore disc golf fan. I just think that he's showed that he's making a clear progression to be better and better every season. And I actually really thought I was impressed by the level of consistency that he showed us this year. He needs to learn how to win a little bit more. I want to see him, take control of a tournament and hang on to it. But with time, that will come.
Mm-hmm. My next pick is Stacy Haas. Stacy, we interviewed her for our interview series last year, and I don't even remember why. There was some buzz around her, and we chose to interview her. And, great interview. We got to talk to her about her signing with MVP. And then all of a sudden just goes, very quiet and had a pretty rough start to the season. And then turns around and wins the Open at Tallahassee, a silver event last year. And then, pretty unremarkable the rest of the season in terms of finishes. But she was a senior in high school. She's going to be touring more this season and showed the potential and the upside needed to perform well on tour. And that's something I think for a lot of players in her range of Pro Tour finishes, we don't get to see that same flash. And so seeing that ability to win gives me a lot of hope that she could be one of our surprising stars this year.
Crazy high ceiling. I think super, super interesting player to keep an eye on as she comes out of high school. I'm going to go with Emily Beach. Super powerful thrower. I think has the skill, like the base level ability to throw it that you need in order to succeed at the Pro Tour level. And if she can refine her game, I think we can see her really take a step forward in 2023. I don't know that we should expect her to be, a top 5 player or anything like that, but inside the top 10, absolutely.
My next pick and my last pick is Macy Vela-Diaz. Macy has shown the upside necessary to succeed and win on tour, several seasons in a row now. And we've seen her on lead card coverage at times and with good performances. And that's true of this season as well. A 6th place at Waco, a 3rd at Music City, an 8th at DDO, a 6th place at Idlewild, right? These are 6th at D-Glow. These are a variety of courses and lots of different skill sets being challenged. The biggest thing that we need to see from her is touring more. And I think it's someone who's easy to forget about because she doesn't tour as much, but she tours more and she could be inside the top 10 pretty easily. She's shown the skill necessary to do so. It's just about how much she plays. And I think she's expecting to play more this season.
It's a great candidate just from the volume of competition. The last one I'm going to go with is Heidi Leine. She's going to be playing more, number one. Mm-hmm. Has already been one of the most talented and promising players in Europe for a couple of seasons at this point. Monster power. Finnish FPO distance record. I think that Leine, now that she's played a little bit, she had some tour time in the U.S. this past season, not a lot. But had good finishes when she did. With more time on tour, very similar kind of story to Macy Vela-Diaz, but even more so because of the, coming over from the other side of the pond. I think that there's a really good chance that Leine is up inside that top 10 at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think it's here's a feat, and I don't have any numbers for reference, but just on face, this is impressive to me. Last year, while touring primarily in Europe, she earned $10,000 in prize money.
Wow. Just dominating.
And, tons of wins last season.
She's probably the best European player behind Kristen, Evelyn, and Henna, right?
I think so.
Who else is in that conversation?
I don't know if I'm
I mean, where did she lose and who did she lose to?
I just clicked out of her profile. I have to pull that back up. But I think, well, you've also got, yeah, she probably is. I think that's a fair point. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see, and I'm excited for her to tour more with.
You have
I think
Katie
she's an excellent pick.
But I think that Lina has been better than her.
I think so too. It's hard to tell because you have the players who have toured in the U.S. and then you have to compare them against those who didn't.
Right.
It's and but let's just pick her. She won in Helsinki, but I mean, she was 40 points above second place in rating.
She's dominating.
So,
yeah. So we'll see what happens in 2023. Yeah. We're super excited. We're getting ready to go. We are about a month now from LVC. So get ready, folks. Season's almost here. More to come on Thursday to get you ready for the upcoming season. That's going to do it for this edition of The Upshot. We'll talk to you Thursday right here on The Upshot.